Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles and on this episode we're going to do It Came From the Network. Now if you're not familiar with It Came From the Network, it's where we review the weird, the wacky, sometimes bad, sometimes good shows you can find formerly on the WWE Network, now on Peacock. On this episode, we let you guys, our friends out there, help pick the show we're going to review. As you can see by the results, actually, that way. You guys picked this overwhelmingly, and as you probably see by the thumbnail, WrestleMania 13. So we're going to jump right into that. I do have one thing to say. As you know, there's going to be pictures. I keep pointing the wrong way. There's going to be pictures right here. Some of the pictures are going to depict wrestlers with tag team titles or intercontinental titles that don't necessarily have them on this show. Unless I say it's a title match, it's not a title match, and it was just the most error-appropriate picture I could find that I wanted to use. So, with that being said, don't pay attention if they have a championship in the picture. If I say it's a championship match, it's a championship match. Got it? Let's jump in. The first match is for a number one contendership for the tag team titles. The Headbangers versus the Godwins versus Furnace and LaFon versus the New Blackjacks. Now the first thing I want to point out is we're going to see a theme running through this show. This was kind of, depending on who you talk to and what historian says this is towards the beginning or the beginning of the Attitude Era, or the Attitude Era may have not started yet, but you start to see the seeds in here. Headbangers are an Attitude Era gimmick. Everybody remembers them. One thing that you're going to notice as a running thing through here, we have Bradshaw, who's one of the New Blackjacks, who obviously changes his gimmick and becomes more famous later on. That's going to be a running theme through this whole show. This match to me was really good, was a really good opener. I enjoyed it a lot. The Headbangers end up picking up the win. I'm going to give this one a 3. I thought it was a really good match to start the show with. I thought the energy was there. The teams were really good. Godwins, to me, are a team that doesn't get as much respect as they should. Doug Furnace and Phil LaFon, more known in Japan than they are in America, but they were a fantastic tag team in the 1990s. If you watch any of the Japan tapes, I believe it was all Japan that they were in. Don't quote me, I might be wrong. It's been almost 25 years, or actually it's been 25 years, and I don't 100% remember what promotion they were in, but I do remember watching their matches, and they were really awesome. I thought this was a great opener. Great way to start the show. Great way to get people into it. I always think tag team matches are awesome opening matches because of the electricity and the energy that they bring to a show. So to me, this is a good way to start. I'm going to give it a 3. Next up, following the theme we just talked about with Bradshaw, we get the Sultan, who goes on to be Rikishi Fatu, and Rocky Maivia, who switches his gimmick and becomes Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, probably one of the most famous wrestlers in the history of wrestling. This was a little bit of a disappointment to me. I expected a little more. You could tell that the Sultan is trying to carry Rocky a little bit. Rocky's a little bit rough around the edges still at this time. This one, and by the way, this is for the Intercontinental title, which was Rocky Maivia's belt at the time. This was in the full Die Rocky Die era of Rocky's career, or The Rock's career. He hadn't quite became The Rock yet, and he hadn't quite turned on the switch that made him one of the hugest stars in the history of wrestling, but you start to see little snippets here. Rocky picked up the win in this one. I'm going to give this one a 2. After the match, we get the Iron Sheik and Bob Backlund, who were the Sultan's managers, interfere, which brings out Rocky Johnson, The Rock's dad, to help his son. It was a nice moment, but the match, in my opinion, the match didn't hold up, and This is probably the first time I went back and watched other than one match on this show, on this card. This is the first time I've watched this whole card, and this match specifically, since probably when the show aired live. I never owned it on video cassette or DVD or anything, and it was never something I searched out on the WWE Network, other than one match, which we'll get to later. But, or maybe two matches, because there's another one I know I've seen multiple times. But anyway, I digress. To me, I didn't get the vibe, and it may be because I seen what Rocky became that I held such a high standard on this, but to me it fell flat. Now our next match, continuing with the theme, Hunter Hearst Helmsley with China in full Connecticut Blue Blood gimmick, which again, he'd go on to change the gimmick a bit, become a huge star later on, versus Goldust with Marlena. This match was alright. It felt more like a match that would fit on a Monday Night Raw than a WrestleMania main event. We see in the end of the match, Marlena gets knocked off the apron into Chyna's arms, who swings her around rather violently. There was a lot of cringy stuff on the commentary, talking about Chyna and the way she looked. It feels uncomfortable now, especially knowing that she dealt with problems with that she had insecurities about her looks. So it's kind of, looking back at it, there's a lot of cringiness on that. And I know it was a different era and a different time. It's just hard to see now and hard to hear now, knowing what happens later on in her life. Triple H picks up the win, or actually Hunter Hearst Helmsley picks up the win. I'm going to give this one again a 2. I kind of expected better than this. These are two guys that I actually love as wrestlers. I loved Triple H is probably in my top 10 wrestlers of all time. Goldust, even now as Dustin Rhodes, continues to be one of the top wrestlers in the world. You could put him in a match cold with anybody and he's going to make an awesome showing of it. So to me, again, another match that fell a little bit flat in my opinion. Now next up we have for the Tag Team Championship, Owen Hart and the British Bulldog versus Vader and Mankind. This match, again, going with the theme, Mankind in the brown gear, the Boiler Room era Mankind, as I like to call it, before he put on the suit shirt and morphed the character a little different way. This was still sadistic Mankind, had the chunk of hair missing. So this is before he morphed the gimmick and became a big, huge megastar here. Already a guy that a lot of people loved him. I personally loved him for his Cactus Jack gimmick. So I carried that over, and I was someone I wanted to see succeed. Vader as well. Owen Hart and the British Bulldogs, two of my favorites. So again, recipe for a great match. And the match was pretty good. It was solid. The one thing, and it's going to take away from my rating again in the end, it ends in a double countout when Mankind has a mandible claw on the British Bulldog. And I know they did that to show that Mankind didn't care about winning or losing, but to me this is WrestleMania. I want a definitive result on WrestleMania. I'm going to give the match a 2, just for the fact it would have been a 3, but without the definitive ending, with it being a double countout, I'm going to give it a 2. Now next up, the match that I've mentioned that I've seen probably the most, and probably seen it 100 times since this time. It's been on multiple compilations. It's on a lot of people's lists of best WrestleMania matches, best WWF matches, best matches of all time. Probably the greatest double turn in the history of wrestling, and if you don't know by now, that probably gives it away. Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Bret the Hitman Hart in a submission match, being refereed by Ken Shamrock. This match, to me, is one of those matches that, you know how every now and again I'll get a question, what matches would you show somebody if they weren't a wrestling fan to make them a wrestling fan? This is one of them. This is one of the matches that I would absolutely point out to look for. This is a perfect example of two elite tier wrestlers going in and putting on a clinic. They used the no DQ stipulation to perfection. There was stuff that was used, there was a lot of furniture used. But here's something that I really enjoyed about this, and it's something that kind of got muddled as the years went on. In this, and in a lot of the hardcore matches, or no DQ, or whatever you want to call them, street fights of the time, you would use a weapon because it was there. You didn't have, oh, it's a no DQ match, so we have to put 10 ladders on the side of the ring. No. You had a table maybe under the ring, or a chair maybe under the ring, because it would make sense to have extra chairs and tables. You might have like the Spanish announce table to use, but you used what was there. At one point, Austin chokes Bret out with an extension cord. So I kind of wish we would go back to that era where it's not so much gimmicky. And I know the cat's kind of out of the bag, and I know there's set up spots, but you can set it up to where there's a reason for stuff to be where it is and where to use it. Why would this be here, kind of thing? Why would this be at be under a wrestling ring? Like a kendo stick. Why would there be 20 kendo sticks under a wrestling ring? There's absolutely no reason, unless later on you go back and you say, I planted those kendo sticks there so I can use them to attack you. Other than that, it's redundant. 40 ladders is redundant. 40 tables is redundant. Just me and just how I feel. Getting back to the match, we get the classic. Austin does not quit, but he passes out due to pain. Bret the Hitman Hart wins. We get a little bit of a confrontation with Hart and Shamrock. Bret continues his heel, attacks Austin after the match. Shamrock kind of runs him off. Shamrock tries to help Austin to the back. Austin hits a stunner on Shamrock, famously converting the double turn, making Austin go from heel to face, which he was already getting some face reaction, and Bret go from face to heel, which he was already getting a little bit of heel reaction. But this cemented that they changed their spots, and it's probably the best double turn that's ever been performed in the history of wrestling. One of the greatest matches on WrestleMania, again, in my opinion. And I know, and I might not have mentioned it in the beginning, we rank everything on a 1 to 5 scale here, so I'm sorry if you're going through this and you think this was 1 to 10. I do apologize. 1 to 5 scale, I don't remember if I mentioned that in the beginning. This one, much like Dave Meltzer, I'm going to go ahead and break my own rules, and I'm going to give this match a 6. I think it was better than one could expect a wrestling match to be, and I think it's one of those times where the match outweighs the card and it defines an era, which it absolutely did. It rocketed Austin to megastardom, to being one of the biggest draws in the history of wrestling. So to me, this match gets 6 just because of everything involved in it. Now, coming off of that, we get the Nation of Domination, which was the pairing of Savio Vega, Farouk, and Crush at the time, versus the Legion of Doom, Hawk and Animal, and Ahmed Johnson in a Chicago street fight. Everything good about the no DQ aspect of the match before, the submission match aspect, was made cheesy on this match. This was a bad hardcore match, a bad street fight. And there's guys in here I absolutely like. I think Savio Vega is an underrated talent. Crush is pretty decent. Farouk I absolutely love. The Legion of Doom I love. Ahmed Johnson, not so much. But it just, to me, this fell flat, and it felt cheesy, and it felt garbage. And I'm not even saying that like a garbage wrestling, like people say CZW is garbage wrestling. It just felt like a cheap throwaway match. And following after what it did, it really fell super flat for me. The Legion of Doom and Ahmed Johnson pick up the win. I'm going to give this one a 1. It's probably the worst card on the worst match on the card, and it was hard to follow what it followed. But even with that, it didn't. It just didn't work for me. Next up, we have the main event of the night: Psycho Sid Vicious defending the World Championship against the Undertaker, and it's Undertaker at WrestleMania before WrestleMania 30, so you're going to know the outcome before I even say it. In the beginning, we get Shawn Michaels comes out to do commentary because he's injured. Bret the Hitman Hart tries to interfere early, gets chased off by Sid. Sid power bombs him. They jumpstart the match. Sid and Taker have a good, solid big man match. Sid Vicious, another guy, Psycho Sid at the time, who doesn't quite get the love that I think he should. I don't think he's the greatest wrestler. He's not Chris Benoit. He's not Dean Malenko. He's not Jerry Lynn. He's not AJ Styles. But for what he was and what he was producing, I thought he was really good. He had a great vibe to him. He had a great aura. Yes, we've all seen the weird and stupid interviews that he's done. But he was menacing. He fit the gimmick, and he wrestled to that gimmick really well. And I thought he was, I think he's better than a lot of people give him credit for. Undertaker, one of the greats of all time. He had turned a corner, in my opinion, in 95 and 96, where he went from wrestling a big man style and evolved a little bit, and we're starting to see the evolution of the Undertaker, where in the beginning he was more about the gimmick. Now you start to see him and really develop and become one of the great wrestlers of all time, gimmick or not. I thought this was a really, really solid match, and it's got a no DQ stipulation, which, again, it's the third match in a row with that, but again, this one, much like Austin and Bret, they kept it kind of simple, and it's the easiest way. Keep it simple, stupid. Bret comes out again, gets chased off again. We see the end. Undertaker picks up the win because obviously, I mean, if you know wrestling, you know that Undertaker doesn't lose at WrestleMania till WrestleMania 30. So I thought this was a really good match. My second favorite match of the night. I'm going to give it a 4 overall. I thought it was really solid. I thought it was a good main event. A lot better than probably most people remember. I would recommend watching this. If you go back and watch any of this, my recommendations would be the opening match, Austin versus Bret, the 4-way tag team match in the opening, Austin versus Bret, Undertaker versus Sid. I'd recommend watching the whole card overall just to see some of the early versions of gimmicks if you're not familiar with some of their starts there. But I thought it was a really solid card for WrestleMania 13. It's a really, other than one match, it really felt like WrestleMania. The matches felt important. The matches felt special. Overall, I'm going to give WrestleMania 13 a 4. I thought it was a really solid show. Yes, there's been better WrestleManias, but not that many. I would definitely put this in the top 10 of all the WrestleManias. And that's saying a lot, because at this point, where I believe we're coming up on 38, they stopped numbering them, so it's kind of hard to remember. I believe it is 38 because it's 25 years since this happened, and this was 13, so we're on 38. So I would say this is in the top 10 easily, and maybe top 5 if I really sat down and ranked the WrestleManias. I might put it in the top 5. Overall, a really solid show. I thought it was good. Let me know what you think. What was your favorite match? Did you love this? And I know everybody's going to say the same match. What other matches? What's a sleeper match? What matches did you like if you watch this? What are your memories if you were alive at the time? Put it down here in the comments. Make sure you hit the like and share. And also, if you watch this video to this point, and you've liked, you shared, you commented, you're subscribed, let me know that you're watching this video to the end. I want to know how many people are sticking with me all the way through. Put down here in the comments if you've watched it this far, double turn. That way I know if you're watching it to the end. That way I know if I need to maybe shorten it down, make them longer. You know, you get it. It helps me to judge what the engagement is. But with all that being said, my name is George Coles, and this has been another episode of It Came From the Network.